The drama surrounding the Indiana Fever's playoff opener against the Atlanta Dream wasn't just about basketball. It was about survival. It was about frustration spilling into open defiance. And it was about a team whose season has already been defined by obstacles stepping into a spotlight they'd fought tooth and nail to reach, only to feel like the very league meant to protect the integrity of the game had turned its back on them. Stephanie White had seen enough. The head coach of the Indiana Fever had watched her team fight through adversity all season, dragging themselves into the postseason despite an injury list that looked more like a full roster than a set of scratches. But on this night in Atlanta, she saw something worse than bad luck. She saw officiating tilt the court, momentum being stripped away possession by possession, and in a moment of raw honesty, she snapped. Her words carried what every Fever fan was already screaming at their television screens. Her voice echoed the boiling frustration in the huddle, in the stands, and across the league. And for speaking that truth, she was slapped with a technical foul. To understand just how explosive this moment was, you have to know what Indiana walked into that night. Imagine preparing for the biggest stage of your season, only to realize half of your weapons are missing before the ball even tips. 6 players, 6 rotation pieces gone, ripped away by cruel timing and brutal injuries. Caitlin Clark, their star attraction, sidelined with a groin injury that ended her rookie year prematurely. Chloe Bibby down with a torn knee. Sophie Cunningham and Sydney Colson, both with knee issues. Ari McDonald with a foot injury. And in a gut punch that landed less than 24 hours before tip-off, Darius Dantas was thrown into concussion protocol. One after another, the names stacked up until it wasn't just a setback, it was sabotage by fate itself. The Fever weren't just shorthanded. They were gutted. Other playoff teams were rotating fresh legs, keeping stars rested, cycling in quality options when foul trouble struck. Indiana had no such luxury. They were running with whoever was left standing, patching over holes with grit, desperation, and sheer stubbornness. Yet still, they made the playoffs for the second straight year. That resilience is almost impossible to quantify. And in one of the strangest visuals of the postseason, the Fever chose to travel with everyone anyway. 16 players, injured or not, lined the bench in Atlanta. It was a gesture that screamed unity, but also highlighted the absurdity of their season. They didn't even have enough seats. The official bench filled so quickly that players in street clothes had to sit behind it, forming a second row that looked more like an airport waiting area than a playoff sideline. It was comical, almost surreal. A franchise so riddled with injuries that they literally couldn't fit all their players into the official bench space. But this wasn't a team ready to roll over. If anything, the adversity gave them fuel. Kelsey Mitchell came out firing. Aaliyah Boston attacked the glass like her season depended on every rebound. They punched Atlanta in the mouth, storming out to a 15-6 start that silenced the Dream's home crowd and made the impossible look possible. For a moment, it seemed like Indiana was about to write one of the great underdog playoff stories. And then the whistles began. It started subtly, but the pattern emerged quickly. Defensive stops that should have triggered fast breaks were halted by phantom fouls. Clean contests became free throws for Atlanta. Lexi Hall found herself whistled for contact on Ryan Howard, despite standing in textbook position with barely a fingertip laid on her opponent. Stephanie White challenged the call. She won, but at what cost? She'd been forced to burn a precious challenge in the first quarter just to keep her players from drowning under poor officiating. Not long after, another absurd foul forced her second challenge. She won again. 2 challenges in the first half, both proving the referees had been wrong. But with her lifelines already gone, White and her Fever were left at the mercy of the very people stacking the deck against them. The game spiraled into chaos. Aaliyah Boston took an elbow to the face and nothing was called. Brianna Turner was penalized for contacts she never made. Meanwhile, Atlanta's physicality went unchecked. Brianna Jones shoved through defenders in the post without a whistle. Brittany Griner, an immovable force in the paint, banged bodies with Boston possession after possession. But the whistles stayed silent. One side was punished for breathing too hard, while the other was allowed to wrestle their way to advantage. Fans watching from home could only shake their heads. By the time Stephanie White erupted on the sideline, her technical wasn't just a moment of anger, it was a breaking point. She'd watched her players claw their way into this game despite 6 missing teammates, despite being undersized and undermanned. And now she was watching that effort get stolen possession by possession. The technical was inevitable. It was a statement to her players. I see what's happening, and I won't stay quiet. The Fever bench tried to keep composure, but even there, the frustration was visible. Caitlin Clark, in street clothes and sidelined by injury, stepped in to calm her own coach when White looked ready to take it even further. It was a surreal image, the injured rookie, who'd become the centerpiece of Indiana's season, playing peacemaker for the veteran head coach who'd simply had enough of the nonsense. Atlanta, of course, capitalized. They turned the chaos into fuel, stringing together a decisive third-quarter run that flipped the game from a fight into a chase. Indiana's early rhythm was gone, stripped away by whistles and swallowed by momentum. Every time the Fever tried to claw back, another call cut them off, and yet they refused to fold. Kelsey Mitchell was nothing short of brilliant. She dropped 27 points, her playoff career high, on nearly 50% shooting. She willed the offense back to life again and again, hitting tough jumpers, finding teammates, and even notching a block on the defensive end. She was everything Indiana needed her to be. But no matter how hard she pushed, she couldn't carry the entire load. Boston fought her own battle in the trenches.
She was hammered in the post, slapped with foul trouble, and constantly surrounded by defenders.
Yet she still grabbed 12 rebounds, working relentlessly to keep Indiana within striking distance. Offensively, she was quieter, just 8 points, but her presence on the boards was the lifeline keeping the Fever afloat. Lexi Hall chipped in 9 points and buried one of Indiana's rare threes, but her real contribution was the energy she brought on defense, chasing screens and refusing to back down despite the constant foul trouble she was saddled with. But the difference between the teams was depth. Atlanta rolled out waves of fresh legs. Alicia Gray and Ryan Howard both scored over 20, Naz Hillman poured in 16, and Griner's mere presence opened up the floor for everyone else. The Dream had weapons. The Fever had survivors. And as the game wore on, the gap grew clearer. Indiana shot under 35% from the field. They went 2 for 15 from 3. Atlanta kept rebounding their misses, piling up extra possessions. The game tilted further and further until the scoreboard reflected the imbalance everyone had been watching unfold. Yet when the final buzzer sounded, the story wasn't just about losing. It was about refusing to give in. It was about a team that had every reason to collapse, every excuse to wave the white flag, but instead played until the horn with their heads unbowed. Now the series moves to Indianapolis. For the first time since 2016, the Fever will host a home playoff game at Gainbridge Fieldhouse.
Nearly a decade of waiting, nearly a season's worth of punishment, and a controversial game, one loss all converge into one defining moment. This isn't just about winning or losing.
It's about pride. It's about showing that Indiana basketball still belongs on the playoff stage. It's about giving the fans who've endured years of heartbreak a chance to roar again in meaningful postseason moments. The Fever will still be without their 6 missing players. Caitlin Clark won't walk onto that floor. Neither will Cunningham, Colson, Bibby, McDonald, or Dantas. The deck is still stacked. The challenges are still there. But so is the fight. Kelsey Mitchell cannot do it alone, but she doesn't have to. Boston will battle again. Hull will scrap for every possession. Turner, Howard, Hartley. Someone has to step up as the second scorer to prevent Atlanta from smothering Mitchell with double teams. And then there's the crowd. Nearly 17,000 voices can't box out Ryan Howard or guard Brittany Griner. But they can make every defensive stand feel bigger, every run sting deeper, every possession feel like the season is on the line. Game 2 is survival. It's more than just extending the season. It's about rewriting the story that began in Atlanta. Because if Indiana can hold serve at home, if they can feed off their crowd and punch back, suddenly the conversation shifts. Suddenly it's no longer about a robbed game won. It's about resilience, about belief, about a team that refused to be erased by injuries or officiating. The Fever season has already been a battle against the odds. Injuries, depth issues, and now officiating controversy. But sometimes the most dramatic chapters are written when everything says you shouldn't have a chance. Game 2 isn't just a playoff game. It's a statement. And what happens in that arena will define how this year is remembered, win or lose.